So here's why do I get to stand in the front of the room? It just means I'm a bigger failure than everyone else in this room. I've attempted more things and screwed up more things than other people here. And so a little bit of my background, I did student painters all through college. And my wife and I did that business together. She was not my wife at the time. And we ended up doing I thought that was my brother walking down the hall. We ended up running the second largest branch in the country, and I broke, welcome Tom, ended up breaking the rookie sales record that year. From there, a couple of my buddies, kid I wrestled against in high school, and I hired him into student painters. He went and he's like, hey, we're going to start this clothing company. And at the time, College Humor was really hot. Anyone know what College Humor is? This was like a forum back in the day. It was like they basically, it was a funny thing for kids who were in college, and they would cross-sell T-shirts through their company, right? So they get you on there to look at funny stuff, and they would cross-sell T-shirts. So that's what we created with the Wrestling Addicts model. I would interview top coaches across. I've always kind of ran the podcasting setup before podcasting was really a thing, where I would interview highly successful wrestling coaches and get their approach to how they built a business. I mean, it is a little bit of a business. Just their product is, welcome guys. Their product is highly successful organizations. And so I'd interview them, and then we would cross-sell our clothing gear. And then from there, we started a gold business, which is nothing to do with wrestling. But another guy that I hired into student painters called me, said they're expanding out into California and want to be a gold rep. And we ended up doing really well with that. And then we went out on our own and partnered together on that with my brother and my wife. We did $2 million in revenue in 9 months. And that was an incredible business to be a part of. That's where we would buy broken chains, one earring, those sort of things, and we would melt it down. And 1 week we had a $100,000 gold bar, which was pretty cool. And it's a little awkward walking around with $100,000 in your backpack in downtown LA, but we lived. And then real estate investing through 2010 to today, I've been a real estate investor on and off. My wife and I have had various partners in it. We flip multiple properties. Currently, we have 4 short-term rentals, 3 long-term rentals, and then our principal residence. And we've done it in Nevada, we've done it in Phoenix, we've done it in Ohio, we've done it in Michigan, so we've done it in multiple different markets. And then in 2013, I flipped this beautiful, beautiful property right here in Mount Clemens, where we had a water line go in. I mean, we basically gutted it and brought it back. And that was quite the experience. And I made $2,500 on that deal. And then meanwhile, and we would have lost money if my mom and dad didn't come. My mom and dad have bailed me out my whole life on everything, really. Even supported me when they probably shouldn't have. No, that's the truth. Yeah, without that, we would have lost money on that deal. And I decided I'm going to go into real estate full time after 2013 and become a realtor full time, because I made $13,000 with a couple people telling me they wanted me to help them buy properties back then. And then from there, we went from 0 to 400 units sold in 4 years. That 4th year, we sold like 412 units, and we've had over $1 billion in sales from 2013 to today. And then I had the blessing and the opportunity to become operating partner of this Keller Williams franchise in the end of 2017, basically 2018. And we went from, as a result of all the hard work of everybody here, we went from number 10 in the state in units sold to number 1 last year, which was quite the feat. It's one thing to go from, number 10 to number 5, but to go from 5 to 1, you're competing with the best, right? And that's super challenging. And so as a result of the highly successful people we've been in business with, we were able to achieve that last year, which is pretty cool. This property in Phoenix, we took from a 2-unit to a 3. I'm sorry, Phoenix. That's not Phoenix. That's Cincinnati. We took from a 2-unit to a 3-unit, and let me tell you, that was a $130,000 rehab. Today would probably, be like a $200 and some thousand rehab. And I got my MBA on that one. That was a circus. And then this was one. We were in the hood, the absolute hood in Cincinnati, and so my wife and I had the genius idea that we would move into it. So no one would break into it. And then it was all Section 8. So my genius, I said, I'm only going to rent to people who have dogs. And so in that 4-unit building, we had 5 dogs that lived in there. And no one breaks into the house with all dogs, I promise you, right? And so we were known as the dog house on the block. In the 9 months we lived there, 5 people got shot. So that was an interesting. If you ever want to filter if you're in the hood on buying deals, call the local pizza shop. If they don't deliver, you know you're in the hood, right? And that's like a really good fundamental. Seriously, right? If they won't deliver to that place, so when we would get the pizza delivered, and they're like, we won't deliver there, and I was like, oh, we are in the hood, right? So that's when you know you're in a D- neighborhood. Okay, so that's a little bit about myself and our journey. So here's 3 personal myths that I want to walk people through, because when they get into investing, they have the understanding that they have what I believe is projections that they've created from what people have told them or what they've told themselves for some reason. I want to break through those for you. And so myth number 1 is, I don't need to be an investor. My job will take care of my financial wealth, right? And this is personal myths. You do need to be an investor because your job is not your financial wealth. Can someone tell me why that's the case? Why is your job not your financial wealth?
Because you can spend everything you earn.
You can do that if you're an investor. Say it again.
Jobs usually have a cap.
No, there's an answer. What else? Right. So first we have to go back a step and define what wealth is. And I believe wealth is the unearned cash flow that you're receiving that covers your everyday lifestyle, right? That's when I believe you become wealthy, right? Wealth is when you don't show up to work and you still have all your bills paid. Anyone disagree with that? Right? So first we have to define wealth in this scenario, and wealth is being able to pay all your bills, and then second step would be able to still live the lifestyle you live today, or whatever your ideal lifestyle is, through passive means, right? And so is that possible by definition when you have a job? Is it possible to achieve that, right? It's not, because a job is never passive, a job is always active, right? And that doesn't mean you're trying to get rid of your job unless you hate it. Then, of course, get rid of it and do something different. But there's a lot of people in the world that have achieved wealth that still have a job. Can we all agree at that, right? And so you need to, in order to be an investor, your job is not going to take care of your financial wealth, right? Or you could say financial health, right? Okay, everyone good on that? All right, so number 2, I don't need or want to be financially wealthy. I'm happy with what I have. Truth. You need to open your eyes. You do need and want to be financially wealthy. Why would you want to be financially wealthy? What would be the reasons behind it? Forget Rolexes and the rest of it, right? Security. Why? What security? Tell me more.
You're just able to do whatever you want and not worry about whether or not you're going to lose your job or if things are going to go up or down or.
Yeah. So what I heard from you was uncertainty, right? Uncertainty, right? And so we don't know. Has anyone had a really scary health scare in their life? Right? So you've had a health scare in your life, right? And what happens in that moment is you reevaluate everything, right? And so everything becomes reevaluated. And the reason for that is if you have a job and you no longer can show up to that job, you now have a problem, right? And you have many problems, one of which is, how am I going to still receive income, right? So you're constantly trying to take what you do every single day and build passive cash flow on the side as a hedge, right? As a hedge against something uncertainty happening, right? I know a lot of people in this industry, and I wasn't in this industry actually when I was making a ton of money, everyone else was not making any money, which was when we were doing the gold business. And that was the 08, 09 years. I was 27, made 300 grand that year. I was living a dream. And, meanwhile, if you come to people who were realtors through 08, 09, that was really hard years for those people, right? And no one forecasted that was going to be the case, that it was going to be that hard, right? So that's one of the reasons you want to build, is you want to eliminate variables from your life. One of the variables is your income stream going to maintain? Everyone understand that and good with it, right? For those people who are earn income through physical means, right? Your physical health, if you end up with a physical challenge, that's going to stop you from working, right? If you're a bricklayer and you can't pick up bricks anymore, that's a problem, And it is foreseeable that you've, at some point in your life, will stop being a bricklayer, right? Does that make sense? Okay. It doesn't matter if I want or need it. I just can't do it. You can't predict what you can and can't do until you try, right? That's something we would tell any of our kids, right? We would all tell our kids that exact same thing. You don't know what you're capable of unless you try it. Yeah, that's my whole saying around just let it fly, right? Just let it fly. You don't know what's going to take place. Just let it fly and see what happens. Okay. Any questions on these or comments? All right. All right. 5 investing myths. Josh, you want to read me number 1?
Investing is complicated.
Okay. What's the truth?
Investing is only as complicated as you make it.
I'm actually pretty good at math, but I like simple things, right? And one of the things that I've learned in it, like anything in life, is everything in life has certain models to it. If we were to talk about health, would we agree that eating McDonald's 3 times a day would not be the epitome of financial health, or I'm sorry, physical health, right? You're probably going to run into some type of issues with that, right? And investing is the same way. There's a series of models. You were talking about this earlier, right? There's a series of models that predict success, and investing is no different, right? We know that being realtors, we know that as investors, we know that in any job, there's a series of models that the most successful people do that you can implement, and investing is the exact same way. Okay, so number 2, the best investments require knowledge most people don't have. Truth, the best investments will always be in areas you can or already understand. Okay, so one of the, just to put this home, one of the things that I hear a lot is, well, I want to, and we heard this if you came to the KW Wealth Seminar, you heard this from Brett. And Brett's at a different level than I think most people in this room are in terms of investing in different markets. And I've had this challenge, and it's cost me a lot of money in the meantime, but I still believe it to be true, is as realtors, if you're a realtor in this room, what market do we know the best? This one, right? We know it, right? And we know it. And what, by knowing the market, what does it allow us to do? Experts, forecast, and execute quickly. What happens with deals? Do deals just sit there and you can just sleep on them? I always tell my first-time home buyers, sleep on it, don't sleep in it, right? Yeah, you want to sleep on it, that's fine. You're not going to sleep in it, right? And that's the same thing with deals. We're talking immediate, right? Immediate. You need to jump on it immediately. You always have a listing agreement in your car, and you always have a purchase agreement in your car. Why? You have to execute immediately when you see an opportunity in front of you. If you don't know what you're talking about, your ability to execute quickly is hard, right? So the deal I bought on Maryland and in Warren, I mean, I drove to it and I made an offer out driving home to the realtor. I didn't need to run comps, right? I didn't need to do these things. I already knew the market. I'd already done all the prep work. I already understood what the market was. I didn't need to wait. I executed. By the time I got home, it was about an 8-minute drive, an accepted offer, right? Verbally, I need to follow it with paperwork, right? And so you can immediately invest. So I always highly suggest investing in markets that you know, and the money you make, then travel and do that somewhere else, right? Travel and go, and then go to open houses. Some of you guys might have saw me post walking that $4.5 million property in Fort Myers. When you're a real estate investor, real estate's everywhere. So as long as you schedule your vacation in a way in which you can write off, that's now a business trip and it's not a vacation. Does that make sense? My wife being my business partner, we haven't had a date night in years. Some of you guys are going to get tired of me saying this, but we haven't had a date night in years, but we have a lot of business meetings, right? We meet once a week, every week for a business meeting. And the truth is the first hour of the business meeting is business, right? That's us catching up, and then we have date night after that. If you work with your spouse, it's impossible for that not to be the case. Okay, myth number 3, investing is risky, I'll lose my money. Investing by definition is not risky. And Gary, if you're in the room with Gary talking about this, he'll then go into a long dissertation about looking up the definition of investing. And he'll tell you that if you read the definition, like he says here, it's not risky, right? And that's the truth. Investing by definition is not risky. What you choose to do within investing could be risky. Does that make sense? Kathleen's not here, but she sent me what she perceived to be a deal. And she's like, well, why would someone accept that offer? I go, because they're not prioritizing price. And if I'm going to go outside of, and I'll touch on this later, if I'm going to go outside of what I do every single day, and Abby, who you see popping in and out, is now going to have to manage an additional project potentially, I need it to be a home run. I'm not interested in bunting for a base hit. I'll just keep focusing on what I do every day. I need it to be a home run, right? And that way, even if all hell breaks loose, I still don't lose money. I hate losing money. Why do I hate losing money, Ryan?
Well, she's losing money.
Well, there's the thing about losing money is you then have to go make it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. That's the thing I hate most about losing money is you then have to go make that money back. So it's like a double whammy, you know what I mean? And I know that sounds obvious, but it really sucks in practice, right? If you lose 40 grand, then you have to bust your butt to get the 40 grand back. I hate that. Right. And I'm not unwilling to lose the 40 grand. I've lost 40 grand investing, but it's definitely my preference not to do that. Right. And I do everything I can to make sure that's not the case. So I don't try to make the deal fit the numbers. Right. I always make the numbers fit the deal. Right. So if the deal doesn't make sense based on the numbers, I don't do the deal. End of story. right? I don't try to massage them and best case scenario them, right? Okay. Successful investors are able to time the market. That's the myth. The truth is, in successful investing, the timing finds you. Why is that the case? So I want to add some color to this. Why does the timing find you?
Your eyes aren't as open when you know you're not ready. You know, you're kind of pay attention to what's around you and what you drive past or what you hear. And
Okay. What else?
It's like an MREI. You know, it's as long as you're always looking for that deal, or it's always top of mind when you go into either an appointment or where you're at, what you're looking at. It's your RAS, right? So you're always looking for that deal. The timing's going to be there. You know.
Yeah, I agree with you. Right. I always say luck is just preparation. Right. Luck is the harder you work, the luckier I've gotten. Right. And that's because opportunities always exist. They're always out there. There's always no one in here can tell me deals aren't always being done. It's whether or not you have the means, capability, and even visibility to even see that the deal existed. Like someone who's trading buildings in downtown Detroit, I don't have the level of understanding to even know if I ran into that deal. You know what I mean? I wouldn't know because it's just playing at a different level than I play at, right? And so you have to have the visibility and understanding, right? So the timing finds you means the model always exists. These models always exist. It's just whether or not a deal's ran into you within that time frame. And you can't time the market, right? We know this from if you've read Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, you know, on the cycle of business that Kristen, our director of sales, loves to run. You can't pick when the bottom's going to be, and you can't pick when the peak's going to be. What you have to do is just pick within a finite period of time whether or not to execute, and you hope your math is right. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Number 5, all the good investments are taken. Every market, and the truth is, every market always has its good share of its good investments, right? I hear this a lot. I hear this myth, right? I'm gonna add one more myth for the realtors in the room. I hear this myth all the time that, oh, it's our fiduciary to get the client the most amount of money. I challenge anyone to show me where on an agency disclosure it says that, because the truth is the agency disclosure and our code of ethics are the two things we're abided by, right? If you think about it fundamentally, getting the client the most amount of money would literally lead to lawsuits nonstop because it's impossible to prove. That's just an opinion. Well, if I would have waited longer, well, I know, Gwen, but if I accept this offer, what if someone offers more tomorrow, right? I'm sure we've all had that same question a million times. And the truth is, our fiduciary is to the best interests of the client, right? To the best interest. And clients' interests aren't always netting the most amount of money. Anybody had a client who just wants speed and certainty, right? Speed and certainty all the time. So literally, you can't say you're a fiduciary in that scenario to get them the most amount of money. You're going against what they want them to do, right? But I hear agents parrot this comment over and over and over again. And sometimes I want to be a jerk and say, show me where it says that. You know what I mean? I don't. Usually, unless it's someone I really like. Yeah, so all the good investments always exist, right? And a lot of people, and we know this from Open Door, we know this from all the real estate investors that are doing wholesales. We know there's about a 10% segment of society that wants speed and certainty around their transaction, and how much it is not always their priority, right? How netting the most amount of money is not the priority. And if you're a realtor and you've done a lot of transactions, we know this to be true all the time. Right? I walked into a house. He's like, it's the second house I've inherited this year. I'm financially wealthy. I'm financially independent already. This is nothing but a hassle. I want you to buy this right now, right? And I want to be done with this thing. I just want this hassle to be over with, right? There's always those people that are motivated with speed and certainty, right? And that's where cash is king, or like cash, right? Because offering and putting a house on a credit line is the equivalent of cash to that seller, but that doesn't mean you have to have cash in the bank for it. Does that make sense? That agrees, whatever that ding was. Okay, any questions so far? All right, what I wanted to do is set up the framework of understanding walking into real estate investing so you have the right approach, right, and the right perspective. All right, so that was my goal through so far. Now, okay, we've got an opportunity that exists, right? An opportunity happens. What are the different things that we can, how should we approach this? In realtors, you have more tools in the basket. And if you're not a realtor and you're interested in becoming one, we can talk about that at the end. All right. So proven systems and approach. One of the things we can do, right? I think of this as deal hierarchy. What is the first thing we do when we're walking up to the house to a listing presentation. I always recommend the 3-prong approach, right? And that's cash today, list with some fixer upper or total rehab, depending on the scenario, right? To do the most, right? So we can buy it, and we can buy it to rent it, right? As a realtor, you can walk up and buy it. Now, mind you, I'm not saying do things that are anytime outside of, if you're a realtor and you're going to buy it, Gwen, what are some of the best practices around making sure you don't get sued later if you're a realtor going to buy a property? What would you suggest?
I put it in my purchase agreement that they realized they may have gotten more money had they put it on the MLS and they sign it.
Yeah. So if you provide a seller net sheet to them, if we come to the market and we believe we listed this and I believe you'll net this, or I can buy it from you today at this price, and you provide them both options. If you're talking technically, you don't have to do that. If you want to get an open shut case, if you were ever get sued, right? Those would be very good documents to have in your hand, right? Because the opportunity for you losing that case, or even an attorney taking that case on behalf of the seller because they have seller's remorse, are slim to none because you have those documents in hand. That's kind of I just got this sent back in return. This case is done and over with, unless the person just wants to burn cash for the sake of burning cash, right? So you can walk in and you can buy it to rent it. Anyone disagree with that as an option, right? You can flip it, right? You could flip that property, right? You could seller finance a wrap. What does that mean? Come on, someone has to know. Land contract, right? So you do a land contract, right? You do a land contract, and you're going to do that into a trust where you're the beneficiary of that trust, and you're not going to record it in order not to trigger the due on sale. Meaning you pay the seller pays the note, or you pay the note directly, right? Some sellers you're going to say, oh, well, why would the seller do that? I don't know. Why would the seller sell it for $100,000 less than what they could go to market for? Everyone has different priorities, right? They may want to make the spread. Someone's sitting at 3% interest rate. They're going to land contract it to you for 7%. They may want to make that 4% spread, right? So there's a lot of options, especially with people that want to exit. And you may give them an option on that to execute at a certain price, right? You may give them so they can earn the cash flow on their equity, and they can make the spread on what their interest rate is, and they get some cash up front for an option. You don't have to record the option. I mean, it leaves yourself a little vulnerable, right? Because they could sell it and you got to figure out what to do then. But, you could do a seller finance wrap. Wendy Patton's the queen of these sort of things, lease options with an arbitrage, those sort of things. But if you don't know what I'm talking about here, go do your research so you can understand it. Because I think of when you walk into any appointment, right, whether you're an investor or you're a realtor, think of these almost as tools in a tool belt, right? And you walk in. If you're a contractor and you show up with just a screwdriver, you only get to do the deals that require screwdrivers, right? But if you walk in and you have a full tool set, right, now you get to do all the deals that tool set and that tool belt have. Does that make sense? Some of the things that are possible, you could develop into the highest and best use for that property. What are we seeing happen? I told my investors back in 2014 to buy everything in Southeast Royal Oak on a 2-1 slab. That's a 2-1 slab that's 800 square feet. And they're like, oh, that's future development. That's speculation. I'm like, yeah, smart speculation. And sure enough, where are all the new builds going now, right? So what are one of the things you could do in that sort of idea? Development to highest and best use. What does that mean?
You could change the zoning, you could change the use of the building.
There's a lot of money in changing zoning. Don't ask me how to do it, but there is, because Gary told me there is. Yeah. Well, you've seen this, Josh, right? What's happening in Berkeley or Ferndale or Royal Oak? They take the 800 square foot bungalow in a basement, pop the top, blow out the back, right? So you can go and understand that there's a higher and best use to this piece of land, and there's a margin by doing this work accordingly, and then you get to sell it as, not necessarily a new build, but a new development, right? Does that make sense? You can wholesale it, right? Someone tell me what wholesaling is.
Not a contract to buy the property, but you sell the contract.
Yeah, so you're not selling the property, you're selling the paper, right? Every contract in the state of Michigan is assignable unless it says it isn't. Okay, and that could be your cable, right? And I guarantee Comcast says not assignable in it, but that could be any contract is always assignable, right? So you could sell the paper on it, right? So you put it under contract for 100, and you find an end user for 130, and you make the spread, right? That's absolutely possible. You can walk in and do that exact thing, right? You can list it, and you could double end that property before the market, right, before you come to market. Realize within our brokerage, you can pre-market your properties to the other realtors in our office before they hit the market, right? There's nothing against our code of ethics or anything like that. So you could double end it within the brokerage, you double end it to your own buyer. Mind you, again, we're always disclosing to the seller, right? We're always saying, hey, there's an opportunity, you can go to market or you can take certainty right now. We're currently, and I'm going to walk you through the math on our Ferndale flip. We had an agent on our team who we had the perception had a buyer was going to come in and offer 275. Tom's doing the painting on that deal. She was going to offer 275 on that property, and we were willing to sell it to that consumer before it hit the market for 275 because that's what we felt like we could get for it. Right? Does that make sense? Right? And we're the sellers, so we can do whatever we want. Right? Okay. You could just list it on the MLS, right, and then do a co-op deal with someone, right? Or you could do property improvements, right? Say you have got extra cash. You could loan to a seller if you want to figure out additional income streams out of listing a property. You could provide, there's no reason you can provide a loan on rehab. Say you're going on a $300,000 listing, it's grandma's house, right? It needs $65,000, $70,000 in renovation. You could loan that money to the seller. I offered to do this on the Madison Heights deal you'll see earlier. You could loan that money to a seller, make an interest, right? You make a higher commission because now the property is worth more, and you can charge a higher commission or a flat fee for managing that project, right? Create these additional income streams off of that listing, right? And I always, bear with my language here, I always believe the listings that generate the most amount of leads are the prettiest and the shittiest, right? You get all the investor leads on the dogs, and you get all the beautiful retail leads on the beautiful properties. Those two on opposite ends of the spectrum always generate the most amount of leads, right? So if you can bring a property from mid to premium, there's a lot of value in that a lot of times, and you also get to generate a lot of leads. And if you loan the money and manage the project at the same time, you've now created 2 additional income streams for that. If you guys want any models around that, there's a lot of people in Gary's group that have some models around rehab. And you'll hear them speak at Mega Camp. They always have at least a panel, and I'm sure there's one at Family Union. So, any questions on this? What I want you to realize is if you're the person who walks in and just tries to slap 6% down on every appointment you go on, you're going to continue to find less and less opportunities for yourself. You need to become the realtor that understands multiple scenarios, and as a result, you'll create multiple income streams. And if you're an investor, you really should look to get your license because there's no reason you shouldn't be at least monetizing a referral fee on leads that you're generating that don't end up, taking your blood-sucking lowball cash offer, right?
I say, don't have that limiting belief that you don't feel like they would take that offer just because you wouldn't take the easy button offer. Because remember, we were talking with an agent who was like, "There's no way they're going to take that," and then they end up wanting to take that.
Yeah, it happens every deal I bought. I would have probably a ton of people tell me that that's never going to happen, right? So people try to project limiting beliefs on you all the time. You just got to be like just like a duck and shed that water consistently. They're just giving projections, right? When someone says you can't do something, I learned this at Trump U actually. If they say you can't, be like, you're right, you can't. I mean, that's kind of confrontational, but it's the truth, to be honest. Okay. So think about it. You got to know your value. You got to know, I would say more than just value. You got to know your stuff, right? Know your value, know your stuff. And then when an opportunity comes across, you figure out which one of these options could work, right? And then worst case scenario, you list it. That's the last on the hierarchy, right? Worst case scenario. And then you make the deal. Any questions on this? There's more stuff on here. You can buy notes. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but this is, I don't want to make it, investing 301. Okay. All right. So here's the one we're doing right now. How do we procure this deal? This is 260 Farmdale. It's coming to market here. We're getting photos anytime. So an agent at the KW Metro office told Emily on our team that the seller wants to sell immediately. She believed there was mold in the attic and it was infecting her. It was infecting her family, and she believed she didn't have enough cash to fix it, and she didn't want to fix it while the kids were living in the house. She just wanted cash, and she wanted it today. Mold ended up being $6,000 to fix, and it turned out it wasn't in the attic, it was in the basement. And I was walking the deal with Jonathan Sessi, and I go, this looks like mold in the basement. Unfortunately, I've become an expert in mold. And I'm like, it looks like mold down here. I'll bet this is mold, right? And in the attic was just mildew, right? Which is kind of funny. So when you get into investing, you're going to end up in these morality situations, right? And so I know from someone who had challenges with mold and is literally on day 2 of mold detox. I guess like 18's high and I'm 98. So like those numbers aren't good. And that's from walking a lot of foreclosures back in the day. And so one of these things that happens with mold is it gets into your HVAC, and if you don't do the right proper precautions, you may mediate the mold, but the mold spores from the HVAC is still blowing all over the house and still infecting the people who live there. And so we're presented with a morality decision at this point, right? Do I pay to get the ductwork clean from mold because I know mold existed in the house, and technically I remediated the mold itself, but did I remediate what happened to the mold from the spread? And I was like, we're going to do it, right? Because I think that's right for the end user, and I don't want to push that forward onto the next person. And we chose to take less in profit in order to mediate the mold from the HVAC, right? If I'm just a cold-blooded capitalist, that's someone else's problem, and they could do testing and figure it out. But me, I'm like, there's plenty of margin in this deal, and even if there wasn't, I still would have done it. But you do run across these morality crossroads, right? Of like, it's not best for my bottom line, but it's best for humanity, right? And we chose to take the best for humanity approach, even though it meant we took a little less in profit, right? And then also, so on the opposite end of this, the stairs to the basement were described as death traps and all this stuff. And I'm like, I mean, we don't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, why do we need to do the stairs? That's just to the basement. Everybody's extra cautious when they go to the basement anyways. And my partner said, no, we're going to do the stairs to the basement. I'm like, fine, whatever. So what our scope of work was, new stairs to the basement, mold, a power wash on the outside, and we painted it and we junked it out. And if you were to rank this on difficulty of rehab, 1 to 10, 1 being easy and 10 being hard, what would you rank this as? 3 at most. Just mold being involved caused it because you run in these morality clauses, or not causes, but morality situations. But I mean, this is a pretty basic deal, right? And the math was super easy. And so if we're talking about timing, right, the ability for the market to tank in the meantime, and being realtors and being a part of this brokerage, we understand what the market conditions are. The market conditions right now are properties that are beautiful are selling with 10, 15 offers sometimes, right? And they're flying in markets that matter. Right, so we know that. So our in and out's pretty quick. So our risk factor of something unforeseen coming are pretty slim. But we all agree to that, right? And because the rehab's pretty quick, and we're not opening up walls, we're not doing all this craziness, our opportunity to come across something unforeseeable is slim to none, right? If I go back to this, yeah, problems all over the place that were not foreseeable because the walls were not open, and it's just a cascading event of craziness. I'll tell you that much. On this one, I was trying to find one off the back, but because we took it from a 2 to 3 unit, they made us concrete this, and it was a huge backyard. It was like 130 yards of concrete or whatever poured on this place, and we had to build a 3-story deck to get to the 3rd unit. All things that I did not know, hence the MBA. Okay. All right. So any questions on this? All right. Funny enough, networking has been one of the ways I've personally generated a lot of business as a realtor. So how do you think I've generated my investment deals? Right. I mean, it correlates. Right. Okay. So here's the math. So again, going back to the deal hierarchy, I'm looking to see if I can rent this first. I come across an opportunity because buy and hold and cash flow in order to be wealthy is always the first thing I'm pursuing. I don't need short-term flip cash that then I have to figure out how to get enough write-offs through the government to then write down the income I'm making, right? I make enough income from my job. I'm not trying to make income from investing unless it's the last case scenario. So again, I'm looking to hold first, right? Because I want cash flow, right, at the end of the day. And I also want all of the tax benefits of holding versus the tax not benefits of flipping, right? Because it moves from active income and I don't get cost segregation or bonus depreciation or any of those things when I flip. I only get them when I hold, right? Okay, so back to this. If I was to hold it, these are the numbers, right? If I was to do it 30 years, 7% interest rate's actually low because just a regular deal is at 7% right now. So it'd actually be, my payment would be even higher. Renovations that we did to the property were about 16.8. That would need to be my down payment, right? If I ran taxes and interest and all this stuff, my annual debt service before even getting into this is just debt service, right? I'm not even talking about insurance. I'm not even talking about management. I'm not even talking about all these different things. I'm already negative cash flow based on what I think I could rent it for. Who here wants to sign up for paying a check to have a renter in their house every day? Not my model, right? Not the model I would recommend. My model is after all pity. Someone tell me what pity stands for. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, management fees, 1 month's worth of vacancy, 1 month's worth of maintenance, right? After all of the foreseeable expenses, I need a $300 spread. You'll hear a very successful agent in our office say he wants a $200 spread. The great news is it's your investing. You get to pick, right? You can do whatever you want. I know people who will do this deal right now because they're like, well, I'm going to refinance and the rates and factor appreciation. And that's fine. That's up to them, right? But that's not me. I want a cash flow, right? And I'm going to, again, filter through enough deals to find a deal that meets my model instead of trying to find the deals and massage the model in order to make the deal work. Does that make sense? Okay. So there might be someone in this room that would do this deal, and all the power to you. I'm not that guy, right? So we decided, guess that hold to rent is not for us, right? And someone would tell you, well, I'm negative cash flow, but look, now my asset that I'm only in for, 100 and, when you include the note, I'm only in for, 62 plus 16. I've almost made half that back in just sweat equity, right? Just from doing the rehab in the place, right? And so if I have to just negative cash flow for the meantime, at least I'm not taking that tax hit when I go to sell it. And so you can rationalize this a bunch of different ways. I just have a model that I'm not going under 300. I'm just not, right? It doesn't matter, okay? Any questions on this? It's your life, you pick. But go in with a model. Otherwise, you're going to try and figure out how to make the deal work, right? So go in with what you want. Why is this? Would you do this deal? No, I would not. Okay. So flip analysis, right? And we have a really good book here at Keller called Flip, shockingly, for flips. It's kind of intuitive in the title. And so one of the things we look to do is meet the 70% rule. Someone walk us through what the 70% rule means. It's on the board. Okay, I'll read it. The 70% rule can help flippers when they're scouring real estate for potential investment opportunities. Basically, the rule is real estate investors should pay no more than 70% of the property's after repair value minus the cost of repairs necessary to renovate the home. Do you hear me? 70% minus the repairs. And we're in business with a lot of phenomenal agents in this office, of which I always get, I've got a deal. I go, great, send the math, right? But what they want to do is they want to send it to me and then have me do the math. And I'm like, no, listen, you do the math, right? You do the math. One, because I want you to become competent in it. And two, I'm not going to have you throw this over the fence and have me do the work. If you're bringing me the deal, I have no problem with paying the commission. I paid Anthony a 6% commission, and I was happy to do it, right? And so I have no problem paying the commission, right, at all. I just want you to do the work and then let me know if it's the deal. Treat me as your investor client. And I would say the same thing if I wasn't involved with the brokerage. If I had an agent sending me a deal, show me the math so I can make a decision. Provide the information so I can execute quickly, right? But you're trying to make me do the work, right? Okay, so on this deal, the 70% rule, so we acquired a little over 2% of what our target is. I am of the belief as a realtor that you list in brackets. And this is something that I'll go to my grave saying. You list in brackets. You don't list at 255, you list at 250. You don't list at 299, you list at 300, right? You list in brackets, right? Because the way search criteria is, no one sets up their criteria to look up to 249,99999. That doesn't exist. They look up to 250. And people look from 250 to 275, 250 to 300, right? So when you list at a bracket, you catch both sides of that bracket on search criteria, right? And I always believe, and I've always been a proponent, that you round down, right? You round down pretty consistently. If you want 310, list it at 300, and you drive up the price as a result. I sat with a seller in Macomb, this is many years ago. It's funny to say that now, many years ago, but it was probably 5-6 years ago. And I sat with her, and she's like, "Listen, we want 306 for this place because for whatever reason they created 306, right?" And I go, "We need to list at 3, right?" "Well, that's lower than 306. I'm like, just bear with me, right? Real estate's no like trust. I know you like me. Now you gotta trust me, right? And sure enough, we got like 312, right? And so we list in brackets. So us as an investor group, we're Team Cash Flow. As you see on there, that's our kind of the team name that we created. Us as investors, we're all realtors that are involved in this group, and we decided that we're going to do what we're going to do what we preach, and we're going to list it at 250. But I really think we're going to get closer to 275. But I'm not going to run my math on projected and anticipation. I'm going to run my math on what the worst case floor scenario is, right? Again, why would I want to do that? What would cause me to run on worst case versus best case?
If it happens, we're still making what we wanted.
Agreed. And what do I hate?
Losing money.
I hate losing money. I hate losing money. I hate it, right? So I'm going to run my math off worst case. And there's 0% chance that I think we're only going to get less than 250. I'll give it at 0.01, right? Maybe it happens. I don't see it happening, right? And we're roughly going to be into this deal for $200,000. So this is the Delia Group seller net sheet that we provide our consumers, right? And so what I ran on here, and it's a little hard to see from a distance, but I ran our seller net sheet. So at the end of the day, if we sell for 250, what are we going to net on this deal?
32 change at the bottom.
Basically 33, right? And so if I go and I run through here, that's roughly a 16%, return on if I was to be in all cash at 200,000 in 90 days, right? I mean, we might be in and out faster than 90, the pace we're moving at. And mind you, if this is what we did and this was my job, we'd be in and out faster. But this is something we're doing on the side, so there's this built-in noise that happens because it's not our everyday focus, right? And Abby had a bunch of personal stuff that happened. She was out for a couple of weeks, so the rest of us just pushed it forward, and Kristen helped, and the rest of us, we all pitched in. But really, it would be her project, so it would move quicker typically for the future. So we would be in and out faster than 90 days just based on the scope of work that we had. So that's almost a 16.5% return. If you were to annualize that, why do we say annualize it? Why would you want to run that? Why would that math be important?
Compares with other investments better.
You got it, right? Because whenever someone talks to you about investments over time, and we know from Simple Path of Wealth that the stock market over time produces what in a return? If you look over the history of the stock market and average it, what is that amount? What's that? A little more, 9.8%. If you were to take the entire stock and play just VISX, the entire index, you're going to get about 9.8% over time, and that's been the average through the history of the stock market, right? So if I'm looking, I've got $1. Do I put it in the stock market or do I put it into this deal, right? What do we know? I'm looking at 10% versus 66%, right? Which one's better? 66, right? And yeah, right. So does that make sense? Everyone with me on this? Any questions on this? Okay. I'm running this off a 5% commission. We're going to offer 2.5 on it. And we're going to take 2.5 as a sales team because I have a lot of stakeholders in my life, right? So I have people on my sales team that are compensated as a result of the profit from my sales team. So let me ask a question in this room to the realtors. If you had an investor that consistently brought you finished products, would you take 5%? If you knew you're going to be in and out and it would sell like that? Yeah, you probably would. That's a business decision, right? That's a business decision that I would do. So the answer for other people would be possibly no. And that's okay, right? No's okay, right? If it's a retail deal and I'm going to have to bust my butt and it's going to take me a long time, I'm not taking your property for 5. Hell no, right? But I think in terms of dollar per hour. My dollar per hour on this deal, if I'm strictly the realtor, is fantastic. I get it on. I get all the right marketing in place. I get it on MLS, and now I become who can I negotiate the best way, right? My value comes in negotiating, not in selling necessarily, because the product's going to sell itself. Does that make sense? Okay. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you what I do, right? Okay. So 250 worst case sale price, 275. Spend a little on extra rehab during moral choices. Our all-in with carrying costs about 200,000. Being an agent, we receive back a chunk of that commission, which is what I was just talking about. We also own the title company, which we get a chunk back in title fees, right? And some additional opportunities that are attached to this deal. These are not reasons to do the deal, and I don't do the deal as a result of these. These are just extra things as a result of being a part of the industry. We get open house opportunities, we get advertising opportunities, we get leads, we get sign calls, and we get market share for our stats, right? So these are all kind of the fingers that come off of this as a result, okay? All right. Any questions on this deal or any thoughts, or how did we come to any of these conclusions? Notice I still have my $5.95 transaction fee on there too.
If you didn't have a team that you were, had stakeholders in, would you raise your commission to make more ordinary income as opposed to capital gains income?
Ask again.
Would you raise your listing commission to have more classified as ordinary income as opposed to capital gains? Take some of the profit you're going to make and make it a sales commission.
Thinking through. I know what you're asking me. If my entity was better set up to take distributions through my real estate company, I would do that. Right? A lot of people, when they flip, they're not funneling that money through their S corp, so they're having to pay, like you said, capital gains, because capital gains tax rate and income tax rate are the same, right? Capital gains just means you're paying income tax, right? And so, but if you have the ability to filter a chunk of that as a distribution, then you would want to run it through the entity that has the opportunity for a distribution versus if you're like have yourself on a salary, right? So to answer your question, if that's true, then yes, yeah, absolutely. And if you're doing enough flips, I would encourage you to just filter it. You could also just own it in the LLC that you have your real estate business in, and filter the income directly that way. You know what I mean? So then it becomes irrelevant, right? If it's Josh Hepner LLC, just own the property in Josh Hepner LLC. Because if you think about it, like say you were to get sued and you have to shut down Josh Hepner LLC, like as a realtor, you just form another one. It doesn't really matter. So you're not worried about like the ongoing liability necessarily, and you're probably not carrying a ton of reserves in that account since it's just you. You know what I mean? So does that make sense? Okay. All right. Any questions on this deal? What I wanted to do, and I ran out of time, was to run this math for everybody at 275. But what I would tell you is that profit's almost 50 grand, right? If I was to run the same seller net sheet, it's about 50,000. Okay. All right. This is the deal we did last time. And I always look at this as like when you talk about advertising opportunities, this photo we took in the upper right here, this was me sending out a beacon to other agents that are interested in running essentially the hybrid agent model, which is being an investor and a realtor, right? That's me putting out the bat signal of this is the place to hang your hat, right? And if you want to come do this with us, right, this is the shop that you want to do it. I haven't posted the stat of what we profited on it, right? I don't care. Like I want that to be, for the right people, they'll be attracted to that. And let me say it differently. For the people I want to be in business with, they'll be attracted to that. I want people that are financially focused like this. I want people that want to go and do deals, right? I want people that want to be financially wealthy, right? And so that was my advertising opportunity right there. And that's why I showed it off, right? Because whatever we put out into the world, we get back. You put out negativity in the world, you'll find a bunch of negative people that'll come back to you. You put out that you're doing all this financial stuff into the world, you get a bunch of financial people that come back to you. It's just a choice of what you're choosing to project yourself out as, because we are what we attract, right? Okay, so that's just a side note. And then this was the property. So the scenario here on this property, and some of you know this from previous classes, is I sold this house to him back in 2015 or 2014, 2015, right when I was, really launching. And he had a calamity of events that happened to him. And he and his now wife, girlfriend at the time, they're not people that have unlimited income, right? They are people that, buy a 900 square foot house in Madison Heights for 80 grand or whatever he paid for it at the time, or 60 grand or whatever it was, right? So that demographic, and he was young at the time, and he had furnaces go out, he had roof leaks that happened, this place was, and he had done everything he could to keep up with the series of things that were failing around him. And he finally got to the point where he ran out of cash, right? And he called us to list it. And we came and I'm like, hey, listen, we can list it for this in disarray. And the challenge was he had one of these walls tore down from the roof leak that he had, and he repaired the roof, and he repaired the furnace, and he repaired all these different things. He didn't have enough money to get it to the finish line. So me, being my past client, the first thing I approached him with was like, hey, listen, like, James, I'll loan you the money to finish your house to the state in which this is. I'll make a little extra on the commission. I'll charge you moderate interest on the money, right? That way I can get your commission up because I want to do right by you, right? I want to do right by you. I know he's a good guy, and he just had a series of bad events that happened to him. He's like, listen, I've got 2 big dogs. They're going to try and kill anyone that steps into this house, right? That sounds like an absolute disaster. He's like, I just want to list it as is. And I said, well, what if I just buy it from you then, right? I'll just buy it from you. You can get in and out. You pick when you move out. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. You pick when you move out, right? Whenever you can find a new place to go and rent. And he was happy because he was putting like, what was he putting, Ryan? Like 60 grand in his pocket, something like that, 50 grand, something like, I don't know, maybe it was 30 grand. He was putting enough in his pocket in which he felt comfortable to move to the next stage of his life. And he was good with that. And he's like, you're telling me I don't have to do any showings. I don't have to get my dogs out of the house. I don't have to do any of these things. And I don't have to worry about not being able to go conventional financing, which was all the scenarios I was presenting that were going to be challenges for him, right? He's like, I'll just be in and out on this deal. And I'm like, yeah, you can pick when you want the close date to be. And I'll give you, 30 days of free occupancy after, so you can close on it, get your money, find something, and move on with your life or whatever. He's like, done, no brainer, right? And this worked out really well for us, as you can see here. We ended up making almost 35,600 on this. We listed it for 150. Again, we list in brackets. We felt like we were going to get closer to 175, at least 165. But as this rehab was happening, and mind you, we hadn't done a flip in a while. Our playbook for flips. I mean, we didn't even have insurance on this property for like the first 2 weeks because we forgot. Right? Well, when the bank doesn't make you because you're paying cash, you know what I mean? Like, you just forget. And we were sloppy because it's the first one. Anytime you attempt something again, you're always going to be sloppy. Just accept that up front, right? And we have everything else going on, right? We have a ton of other stuff going on, including being parents and spouses and the rest of it. And so, I mean, good thing it didn't burn down. That would have sucked. So we listed it for 150 when it was done. It sold for 180, which was great. And we knew we put a finished product. And we had a couple questions while we were going through this deal. You can see it is not ideal to have this door right here in your kitchen when it's already tiny. So we talked about putting a breakfast nook in there. And I'm like, we don't need to. We don't need to. We could. And yeah, that would be ideal for the buyer if we went and spent all that money. But I don't think we would have got more than 180. Maybe a hair more. But not enough to justify the time, the money, the risk, all those things, right? And so, and our contractor's like, man, I just love doing stuff all the way. I'm like, and you love collecting the check, right? And I'm like, we're not doing it.
Flipping the toilet.
Yeah, we're not flipping the toilet. We're doing what we need to do. These are not morality things, right? It's not a morality thing. I told you earlier we did the extra on the HVAC because I felt it was necessary for the consumer, because I'm not trying to project health problems on someone. But if it's inconvenient in their kitchen, that's up to them to fix. Right? I am a capitalist when it comes to that, right? And so we ended up making 35,600 on this. It was a great deal. We had a 25% return on investment, and this is profit after paying agents, after paying title company. It's not any of those fingers that I was talking about that were additional incomes earlier, right? And 25% in 90 days, roughly, right? Take that times it by 4, right? 90 goes in, 90, 90, 90, 90 is a year, right? And so that was 100% return if that money was active at the same. If we were flipping one of these every quarter at this exact same math, we're making 100% return, right? 100%. Now, if you choose to do hard money, right, you're going to make less profit, but you'll make a higher cash on cash return because you put less in the deal, right? We just choose to just go in all cash because we have the cash, right? And I'd rather just raise the money from the group of people around me. I mean, we don't have to raise the money. We choose to as an opportunity for people that we're in business with. But then pay interest. And someone would argue, well, then that limits your opportunities. I haven't got to the point in which we have more opportunities than we have money yet to then go pull the trigger as a collective group, right? If someone comes to me and says, hey, we've got this $1 million property, it needs $500,000, it's worth 2.5 on the other side. Yeah, we're going to go look for some financing on that, right? But we haven't got to that point. We're not playing. And when I was in Trump U, the instructor's like, why are you scared of those deals? I'm like, I don't know, it's $1 million. He's like, it's just a zero. Are you scared of zeros? And I'm like, I don't know. Right now I am. Right now I am. Yeah. But Anthony and I were talking about $1 million deal, right? Now we got $2.8 million deal. That deal doesn't scare me anymore, right? I'm a little scared, but not like big scared. Not like I would have been back then, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on this? Why would we do this? Why would we put that handrail there? Yeah. Now, on this deal with this FHA, what are the chances we're accepting an FHA deal?
Pretty slim considering the amount of offers.
Yeah. Why would we want those FHA offers?
Drive it up.
That's right. I want to make it available to as many people as possible. because then I get to use, I think of these as like baseball bats, right? I got 20 baseball bats to beat up the top person with, right? And I can drive up their price as high as possible, right? And and remind you, whenever as an agent, for the agents in the room, when you call highest and best, what does that mean? Does that mean whatever best offer you got, you have to accept that? No, highest and best means this is the one we're going to start negotiating with first, right? And you're gonna find these little items in there and be like, okay, owning the title company, oh, I'm gonna work on the other side of title, right? I'm gonna work on getting the other side of title. I'm gonna work on getting a better term here that I don't like. I'm gonna go through that deal and really carve out what's best for me, right? Especially being the seller. As an agent, it's gonna be what's best for the client, right? Does that make sense? So the highest and best is just whoever gets the opportunity to be that I get to start negotiating with. They get the pass through the rest of the threshold. And if they don't want to play, I'm going to see if number 2 does, right? And so it's my filter test. Does that make sense? A lot of people don't understand that. And the sellers don't understand that either. And they'll go with whoever's the cheapest. And I promise you, I heard this quote once, and I promise you through a lot of rehabs and a lot of stupid decisions on my part. I heard this once. It's like, oh, if you think a professional is expensive, wait till you hire an amateur. I promise you that's the case. You find a really good agent, right? They're worth every penny of their commission and some. Frankly, they should be charging you more, right? I promise that's the case. Okay. Any questions on this? Do you understand how we did this and why, right? You see the purchase price 103. We paid for the inspection. Our rehab was 24. We projected 24. We ended up being 24.77, right? Our holding costs were less because we didn't have much in interest. Our sales fees were higher. Don't ask me why. Probably because someone screwed up on the initial seller net sheet. And we ended up selling it for 180, which I like making 35,600 more than I like making 24,700. Right.
Wouldn't the commission sales cost be more because you sold it for more than you put it?
Yeah, that would be a piece of it for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that seller net sheet. When you sell for more, your seller's transfer tax is higher, your title fees are higher, your commission's higher, right? All those things happen. So, but I don't think it dollar for dollar. I think there's probably something in there that we may have missed, but it could be all that.
How do you keep your rehab costs that tight? Are you getting
Well,
quotes in advance? Are you guessing, or are you drawing a number and sticking to it?
It's a really good question. For this deal, it was the first deal I'd ever partnered with people outside of my brother or myself or my wife. And so when we walked in, I went with someone who I knew wasn't going to rob us, which was someone who I wrestled with growing up, right? And I graduated high school with a guy named Dan Jones. And so I didn't shop that because making sure they didn't get screwed was a bigger priority to me than paying less. And I knew the math was there where we were going to make money regardless, but I needed them to get into an investment and make a return more than I needed them to make a bigger return working with someone I've never worked with before, right? So to answer your question, I didn't shop a lot of quotes. I just knew I had a guy who wasn't going to screw over myself and them.
But you got
right.
a quote first. You didn't draw a budget and then just stick to it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We walked them through, and we ended up adding on. We ended up dropping some things and adding some things. Like when I first walked through, he had this. You can't see the back of the house, but he had this giant camper parked in front of the back side of the garage. The whole back. I mean, Jonathan and I were walking around it. He's not here. He's at one of his own personal flips. But on the back side of that, the bricks were basically falling out of the house, and so tuck pointing and ended up being. And mind you, I hadn't done a ton of flips. I mean, I know our Rochester ended up costing almost $300,000 between furniture and the rehab but it was just like hired a commercial contractor and he handled it. We weren't personally doing the stuff, right? And so I was really kind of an awakening on post-COVID prices. What you used to get tuck pointing for like $400 now $900. Which is an awakening for me, to be honest. And because I'm not actively selling listings at the rate that I used to, I'm not actively being involved with the sellers, like getting different quotes and stuff. So it really was a learning curve that I had to get around. And if you're just starting on this, I recommend you get 3 to 4 GC quotes, and you should put a lot of properties under contract that you never buy. That's how I learned. I literally why I have the mold issues I have. The buildings I used to look at in Cincinnati and in Vegas and in Phoenix. In Phoenix, that deal we did from afar, which was, let me tell you, One day I'll write a book that's called More Balls Than Brains. That was a stupid decision. Seriously. The it ended up, time would have solved it, but we got in and out once we broke even. But yeah, one of the ways I learned was I just walked a lot of contractors through on a lot of properties. And back then, contractors had more of a desire to find work than they had work. Today's a little different, you know. But, you know, and once you get your core team together, you hold on to those people and you do right by them 100%. Our team up north for short-term rentals, I mean, I don't even know if I'd want to take on projects without Chad. If we had to go replicate Chad, that'd be really tough. And he's our GC. And I don't always love what he tells me, but I trust what he tells me. You know, when he tells me, oh, it's going to be $6,000 to do this garage for the flooring. And I'm like, what? And he walks me through it. And I'm like, I see how you got to the number. I just hate what you're telling me. Right. And yeah, once you build your team, you hold on to them because you trust them. And trust is worth so much in this business.
And do you cut them in as partners?
He's offered that idea. I'm really, you know this, like I'm really selective on partners. Yeah.
So no.
I'm not unwilling to bring someone in as a partner. I would just need if I'm in and out quick, I'm not against that idea. But if we're going to be in business into the future and we're like getting married professionally, we gotta be aligned for a period of time. But if you're doing like a specific transaction with someone, sure, why not, right? But I would really make sure you know them too. You know what I mean? Because you're still gonna, when you run into that morality clause like we did earlier, and I knowing you probably would have done the same thing we would have done, which is take care of it. But someone who's strictly bottom line focused, they're gonna feel something completely different, and then that becomes a clash, right? And so, yeah.
I wonder, like, if you have a GC and you cut them in for like 5% of the profit, it seems to me that they would then want to watch their charges.
My experience, and I'm not logically what you're saying makes sense. My experience is a lot of people they don't necessarily change the way they think based on what they're paid.
I may have to sit on that a minute.
They really don't. Like, people are who they are regardless of what the financial implications are, right? So you could go dangle, for instance, if you could say, Joe, I need you to be an accountant and I'm going to pay you $500,000 this year. I'm not doing it. You know, like, I am who I am, and regardless of how much money I could make or whatever, I'm still going to make the same choices because that's who I am as a person. You know what I mean? And that's, maybe the accounting's not the best analogy, but at the end of the day, people operate the way they operate, and they don't. I mean, look at people who make choices of like crime, right? And they go and they kill someone over like a $60 pair of shoes or something, or $100 pair of shoes, right? It's like, well, is hard time really worth it? You know what I mean? Or was this dude just stole like $13,000 worth of iPhones and now he's going to prison? I mean, that's crazy. Runs in the Apple store yanking them. I mean, that's bananas, right? So my point behind that is people make the choices they make in life regardless of the implications of it. Look at how many people that end up in, you're like, when you run in their scenario and you're like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? And that's not too different. Their character's their character. So either if they want to not screw you because of that 5%, if there's someone who's going to screw you, they're going to screw you regardless.
Well, I'm not thinking screw me. I'm just thinking be more frugal with their advice and their choices if they have some sort of financial gain.
That could be true for certain people.
Okay.
I think as a general fundamental, people are who they are, okay, right? And that could be true for a specific person, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't mean that they're of poor character just because they give you one quote over another.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
But when they run into that decision, they may on autopilot just make it because they always make that decision, right? So when they run in that, well, I always go this way. I always turn right, right? Why do you always, well, this isn't exactly, maybe it's true for girls too, but as men, I generally go to the same urinal whenever it's available. And I don't know why. I just do, right? I don't know why. The same one in this. You check them all, right? But you make that same filtering choice every time you enter the bathroom, right? And so, because we're just creatures of habit, right? anyways. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so I understand like the purchasing price, inspection, or rehab holding costs, but could you open up the sales cost? So why did it went up? So
Yeah, so if I go back to sellers, okay, so this seller net sheet here, and I wish we had an arm to pivot this, but in Michigan, a lot of things are done based on sale price. So transfer tax is Uncle Sam getting another tax, right? And that's both of them the state and county level. So when you sell for more, your transfer tax is more, right? And so that sale cost goes up. If you're working with a realtor that's paid on commission, the higher the sale price, the higher that's going to be. And then also title fees, the premium itself is set by the state. And what happens is it's actually a bell curve down in cost, right? As a per thousand. $1 million property is not the same expense in title policy that $100,000 properties are. It actually bell curves down in terms of total cost, but the actual dollars goes up when you're selling for more expensive. So the title policy goes up. Typically, your title fixed fees stay the same, so you're actually dollar cost averaging down on that. But as you increase price, your sales costs and your wear and tear fees go up with it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, and that's why you'll see more on that sort of thing. So if you go run a seller net sheet on 300 versus 250, you're going to see a jump as well, right? Sure.
So was this house really like a lot of things you have to do to it? Because I see the cost is only 24,000.
Yeah.
This sounds like a huge.
Yeah. Well, so you learn this as you get into investing. That house was only like 800 square feet. So there's like 800 square feet to paint, and there's only 800 square feet worth of cabinets, right? And then you get into houses that are bigger. Tom, remember when I'll never forget this. I asked Tom on my personal residence, and I go, Tom, I don't really love antique white. What would it cost to like turn this to bright white? And he's like, probably around like 25,000. And I was like, I love antique white. Antique white's great, We didn't flip the bathroom; we just painted it. And I think, what do we do, Ryan? A vanity.
Yeah. The bathroom was nothing.
Yeah, I think we did
Replaced
kitchen. We
all
did the whole
kitchen.
thing.
Appliances, brand new appliances.
Yeah,
Added a wall.
yeah. Put the wall back up.
Yeah.
But when it's only 800 square feet, you only can spend so much. You know what I mean? So for the flip, longer than it should have because it wasn't something that was like our everyday. Like it wasn't our only thing we were doing. I think we were in and out in like 120 or 90 days or something. But that project could have been done much faster. And our contractor, like a jerk, decided to get married in the middle of it. I tried to talk him out of it, but it didn't work. So that put us back 2 weeks in the middle of it too. But again, my priority on that deal was not speed. My priority on that deal was not return. My priority on that deal was to make sure the partners that I was partnering with didn't lose money, right? And so I was willing to sacrifice time, and I was willing to sacrifice potentially money in order to are able to sacrifice return in order for security, right? Because it was the first time they had real estate investing, and I really didn't want to see them get in and out of a deal where they lost money. I could stomach it, but for them that would probably be harder, right? So they will lose money at some point. I just didn't want it to be that deal, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Max, you want to give comments on for people who haven't or are just starting? You just got through your first flip, right? So what do you wish you would have done differently? Or what before going in, what do you wish you would have known?
More expectations, analyzing what the expenses could be, walking through the property with your contractor, not just kind of eyeballing and thinking, hey, this is going to cost me this much, that's going to cost me this much. Like you said earlier, we open up a wall, you don't know what's behind that wall. So I would say what I do differently is going through with a contractor, making sure that everything's checked off, and I got a pretty close estimate to what we will be spending in repairs and renovations. And getting a trusted contractor. I went through 3 different guys. One of them just being a timely matter. Another one was just the work was not to where he said it would be. With finishes just didn't look right. And another one would be is analyzing the property thoroughly. It was a main road property, and it was tough to sell. So we sat on this property for 6 months, listed for 3 months. So it was It was more of a learning experience. We purchased for 130,000, renovations cost of 57, so we're 187 in at this point. Uh, Sale price was 216. After closing costs, we net about 17,000, and that was with a partner of mine, so that was a split. But yeah, just mostly getting the team together. That's probably my biggest focus on my next flip is getting the right team and walking through it before making the purchase.
And what I'll say on that as color to his story is just realize, just like when you first, like if you have young kids, you've watched them go through this evolution. When you first go to crawl, they're not that great at it. And then when they go to walk, they're not that great at it. And you're the same person when you go into investing in real estate. You're that same kid, right? And so, I mean, you've got, I assume, your daughter right there, right? And like, you watch them go through this evolution, right? And you watch them learn and stumble their way forward into becoming unconsciously competent with walking, right? But you currently are consciously incompetent. You realize you don't know everything there is around real estate investing, but don't believe that for some reason you don't have to go through that same pain cycle. You will. What you're here for is to mitigate it, right? And to make less of a pain cycle. You heard him still say he made money. And on his next one, he'll be better, right? On his next one, he'll be better, right? And he'll still screw it up, but he won't screw up the same stuff, right? Or at least less of the same things, right? And then on the next one, the same top grade will happen. Just please don't enter into anything you're doing new expecting that you're going to have it figured out. Just accept up front you're going to screw it up. And it's a lot of times people fear of screwing stuff up is what holds them back, but screwing it up is part of the learning process. You have to go out there. Just try not to make a six-figure screw up, you know.
Right. Well, like you mentioned too, with that door in the kitchen, you know, that you guys were thinking about replacing,
Yeah.
or the staircase, like, you know, I know you guys ended up doing it, but there's a lot of things that we shouldn't have done. That we could have left it as is. We changed every single door and doorknob and hinges in the house. And it wasn't needed. It was just more of like, okay, well, this is new and this is not. Should we do it? Yeah, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, those scenarios. Now I know, like, hey, you know, really it's just the brightness of the room, you know, nothing damaged, and anything that needs to be replaced can go. But anything that's, you know, what's not broke, don't fix.
Yeah.
So,
And the higher your budget on the rehab, the more margin you need because your variance costs is going to go up. So that one at the start here, and I know we're running over, so I'll shut up, but I should have budgeted a lot more when I was deciding to basically take this thing down to the studs and bring it back. I should have budgeted a lot more, like didn't expect line item, right? I needed a lot more. And when you're deciding to redo an entire house on something that was built in 1920, when you open those walls, you don't know what you're getting into, right? And so, and then this one was built in 1904. I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so I would have. But when you're going to do paint and carpet and stuff, the opportunity for variables just become less, right? Because you're just not even stepping into that stuff, right? So this one was a trip, I'll tell you. I've never lived somewhere where my parents pulled in the parking lot and I had to run out there and tell them to run in the house because there's gunshots going on. I grew up in Rochester, so that was an awakening experience. Yeah, quite the awakening experience. All right, so if this is my close, if you're interested in a business consultation, if you're currently a realtor somewhere else, or you're interested in getting licensed, and you think this could be a good house for you, let's sit down and here's the QR code for that. And yeah, appreciate you guys. We have a real estate school that costs you zero. We sponsor you, and all the stakeholders here pay for that every month for your opportunity to be able to go through real estate school for free.
just saved you a lot of money. I wish I would have had this. My license.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think everyone who hangs their hat here. It's only been like the last year. So, and it's really good. The unique thing about Keller Williams School of Real Estate is we actually teach you how to become a realtor and the best practices of being a realtor through this process. You don't just learn how to just pass the test, which is what basically every other real estate school is. It's like you pass the test and you're like, now all the calls will come. And then it's not the way it works, right? It's not how it works. Yeah.
That'd be nice.
And then that's my email. If you guys have any deals that you want to bring to the table, I get a lot of times for the realtors that are in this room if you want to become a part of our investor group, bring a deal, and then you'll be a part of it, right? So bring a deal, we'll all partner on it, and then you're in the club, right? If you don't bring the deal, you don't get in the club, right? If you want us to come and partner with you on something, we'll jump in, and then you can stick around with us moving forward. But if you can't do the work to find the deal, then we don't right now we don't need the money. Someday we may, but right now we don't. So we're not looking for strictly capital. We're looking for opportunities. Cool. Any questions? All right. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for sharing your experience.